This is Back to Back.
Yo, what's up, back-to-backers? This is Willy Joy. Welcome to the show. This is Back to Back. This is my podcast. Happy New Year. January 1st, we are back at it with the first episode of the year. And I had to start this one off right, man. There was only one choice to make. It's time to shake off the cobwebs, get back in the game. 2018 is done. It's a brand new one. The only way I could think to do this is with my first guest of the new year. He wants to be the ambassador for North American hardcore music. It's Lil Texas on the show. I love this guy. I've known him for a number of years now, but he is really having a moment right now. He's been pushing his new Texcore sound, which is, his take on hard dance music. It's new, it's refreshing. You can see people from all different corners of dance music really starting to pay attention. And man, I just love this guy. We think the same way about a lot of stuff. This was a fun one. And Lil Texas has a lot planned for this next year. He's been named a 2019 artist to watch. He's got a brand new EP coming out with a record label that, if you listen to this podcast, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with. His management actually told me to say it, but I feel like he would be mad if I did. So I'm not going to do that, but keep an eye out for his new EP. In the time being, he's got a bunch of new music out. There's a song called Let the Bass Kick that I really like. There's one called I Am Excited that's really dope. All of it doesn't really sound like anything I've ever heard before. So go check that out. I'm going to throw some of that into the Back to Bangers playlist this week. If you're not familiar, that's the Spotify playlist that I update every single week with brand new music from myself, my guests, music that we talk about on the show, and just a lot of other fresh sounds that I think you're really going to dig. The link to that is in the description of this episode, so go check that out when you're done here. As always, you can also reach out to me whenever you want. My email is backtobackpod@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on all social media at WillyJoy or at backtobackpod. Send me your questions, send me your concerns, your comments, send me new music, anything you want, I'm here for you. And, let me know how your New Year's was. What'd you do? Did you have fun? This year for me, I was actually back home, the place where I was born in Minneapolis, seeing my folks, freezing my ass off, popped up a couple times to do some unannounced DJing. It was great, man. I hope you guys had great times. I hope you're looking forward to the new year. 2018, not all bad, not all great. It was a weird one, but, I feel pretty proud of what I was able to accomplish. Looking back, it's sort of crazy to think the entire year between this podcast, between my SiriusXM radio show, and my music releases, I was putting out 2 to 3 hours of content every single week of last year. And that sounds insane to say out loud. And you know what? I'm actually going to keep doing that. I might even do more of that in 2019. I hope everybody out there is ready to kill it too. I think we can all do this together. And that kind of brings me back to my guest this week, Lil Texas, because right now I feel like there's nobody more focused, more stoked about what they're doing than him. This was a great conversation. We met up at his place in Los Angeles, went through his whole story, some of which I knew, some of which I didn't really know. Musically, he's bounced around a little bit until he landed on kind of what's becoming his signature sound now. I could definitely relate to that too. I've definitely been in that zone at different points in my career. And, it's interesting. We talked about his jazz background. He's an accomplished bass player. And to go from, super deep improv jazz to now hard dance and hardcore, I mean, that's just an amazing arc. And hearing how he got there, I think you're really going to dig this. And you definitely need to keep up with him this year, too. He's going on tour. He's playing a bunch of festivals this year. I can't really tell you the details yet, but definitely follow him. You're going to be stoked when it comes out. I'm going to keep this intro short and sweet. I think you're going to be surprised by some of the content of this episode. We really cover it all, man, from the super silly stuff to some pretty serious business. I couldn't think of a better way to start off the new year. So happy New Year to everybody out there, and let's get into it. This is me and Lil Texas back to back. Let's go. You just got back from Mexico, right? Like when I texted you last, you were in Mexico?
Yeah, I was down there for Wasteland, Mexico. It was super fun.
Talk about that, man. I mean, I saw like some of the videos you were posting up. It looked pretty intense. And Mexico is a place I love going in general, but to play shows is amazing. And to go to shows there, it's I don't know what it is, but the vibe is just different to me.
Yeah, I mean, judging off the festival, the passion that the fans had down there for hard dance, hard style, hardcore, hard sci, raw style, which is primarily what I heard, was unparalleled.
Yeah.
Maybe Europe. I haven't been to like DEF CON or Climax or any of that stuff yet. But to see that live and to see them going hard from 4 p.m. all the way to 2 a.m.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Well, and it's a weird thing for listeners who haven't experienced an event like that. I think it's sort of hard to understand. It's not exactly like just going to kind of any festival or any rave. It's like the energy obviously is super high. The way people are dancing is like, it's exhausting to go that long, So to me, even that is like another level of how crazy it can be. So were you out there just hanging or were you playing? Or?
Yeah, no, I was hanging.
Yeah.
My buddy, Junkie Kid, who runs Harsh Records and is, one of the purveyors of hard dance, I think, in North America. He, invited me down there and was like, hey, like, I want to spin one of your tracks. I want to bring you up on stage. Same with my buddy, Albie Loud. He also, kind of debuted some unreleased stuff from me. And a buddy of mine, which I'm not sure if I can talk about that.
Sure,
but,
yeah.
So I did a little couple stage appearances or whatnot, but totally worth the trip, man.
So dope, man.
And got to meet a ton of fans, which was really crazy.
Well, because that community is also really dedicated, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, hardcore will never die. It's the classic saying, dude. It's been around for 25 plus years, and it's still kicking. Although the reach in North America has been limited, it's still one of the largest genres of dance music.
Yeah,
overseas.
That's interesting to think about. I mean, someone actually was telling me that somewhat an insomniac, I don't know if it's Pasquale or somebody else, but like just has like a thing for hardcore and just loves it so much. And that's sort of why they keep including it on all the big festivals and all that, sort of like trying to build that community up. And I don't know, I don't even know if that's true or not, but I thought it was a cool idea. That
I think that you're referring to maybe Jasper Lee and the BassCon thing. They have stages at like a lot of the big festivals now, and they put on Wasteland, which is the big, hard dance festival.
Right.
So there's acts, ranging from like hard style, raw style into like hardcore, you know what I mean? And maybe some up-tempo stuff.
Right. Well, and so, half for myself and definitely for some listeners, like there's all these subgenres, right?
Yeah.
And so is there like hardcore is sort of like the blanket term, right? Or am I wrong about that?
No, hard dance would be the blanket term. I think that people in North America use
hardcore.
Hard dance. And so hardcore, which is where my sort of, tastes lie, what I like the most, is generally like on the slower end, I would say probably like 175 all the way up through, up into like the 200s. But once you get into the 200s, you're looking at like up-tempo, terrorcore, speedcore.
Is it mostly delineated by how fast it is, like the BPM?
Yeah,
tells you what genre?
Totally. And it also has a lot to do with the kicks. Actually, that's more what it is and how much melody is involved, where a lot of like hard style, like for example, like the Dawn Headhunters or something, to keep it simple,
Yep.
is very melodic, and his kicks change pitches. So they go through series of chord changes, whereas something more like raw style would stay on a singular note with the bass, have more screechy, and it's like more raw in its essence. And the kicks are a little different. Hardcore is faster and has much more of like a gritty kick to it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the kicks, I love the kick. Sound design, I love everything about it. When I was literally just talking about this a couple hours ago. The first rave I ever went to was mostly gabber. And that was more or less, like I started off more with happy hardcore, but like that was my shit. Like gabber and hardcore, like that's how I started off.
Oh, yeah.
I still have crates of gabber records at home that I ordered from Amsterdam. And dude, I mean, it was my thing for like, a few years in my teenage years.
Cool.
And it was like it was a moment. I mean, I grew up in Minneapolis, and there was a big Midwest just hardcore scene in general, hard dance scene. And then it seemed like it went away for a while. And now, I don't know. I don't know if it's coming back now, but I am seeing more people kind of embracing it again.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel. I mean, maybe it was just sort of taboo to say you liked it for a while, and now people don't care as much, but...
Well, I think like a huge part of it, and to backtrack a little bit,
Yeah,
sorry
please.
to anybody out there if I just butchered the, sort of key terms, and there's a lot of elitists in our dance out here, and I'm doing my best here. Okay, sorry guys, this is just what it sounds like to me. So. Yeah, I mean, obviously in the 90s it was popular, you know what I mean? And then it sort of kind of fell off within like the 2000s in the major scene with the advent of like, what we call today like EDM,
right?
You know what I mean? And big room, blog house, et cetera, trap, moombahton, dubstep, all that stuff sort of, I think, overshadowed that genre. The hardcore people in Europe, the sounds went from gabber and happy hardcore into like the modern day hardcore, like guys, like Anger Fist and stuff like that. And people on Masters of Hardcore, Miss Kate, Deadly Guns.
What was that one label? I still have shirts. Mokum.
Mokum?
Mokum.
Maybe.
Dude, I'll send you some stuff.
Okay,
they were
please.
big for me back in the day.
Sick. Yeah, my scope, my knowledge on the early stuff is somewhat limited.
Oh yeah. Well, and I don't even know if this is a big label or not. Like I'm super ignorant. I just knew at the time I bought a bunch of shit from this label.
Yeah. So I think now there's always been a community in the States for hardcore. There's obviously a huge community in Europe, especially the Netherlands and Italy. But in the States, dude, it's very, very small.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of producers and a lot of people who are getting into hardcore, Americans at least, are just constantly seeking to be European. They're constantly trying to be Dutch. They're constantly trying to be Italian and try to get on these Italian labels, and have never focused on the market that they're in, which is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, man. And I want to like dive into all of this and talk about all of this. But before we get super deep on it, I kind of want to know where it came from. Because it's not like we've ever hung out a lot, but I've known you and kind of run into you at like different phases in both of our lives, in both of our careers. And I think we've known each other online for a fairly long time, just casually. I want to talk about where it all started for you, first of all. So, I mean, you're Lil Texas. You are actually from Texas.
Yes, I'm
right?
from Dallas.
From Dallas. And born there?
Yes, born there. And the amount of times I get that question is insane. I'm like... Dude.
It would be weird to name yourself that if you weren't from Texas, but
yeah, it's okay.
But honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if somebody just named themselves that and was, from,
This day, I'm for real.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Would not surprise me. But so growing up in Dallas, were you like in the city?
More or less, yeah. I have a Dallas address, just kind of north of downtown is like sort of where I grew up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can relate to that. I mean, I've always, I grew up in a city. I've always kind of lived that city life. What was going on around you, like musically, culturally? Who were you hanging out with, growing up from like ages 0 to 10, like what kind of stuff are you being exposed to? What struck a chord with you, musically, culturally, anything?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I think really, really resonated with me was like nu metal culture. And I was really young. Excuse me. And so, like an older neighbor friend or something showed me like Korn. And then like, I found out about Limp Bizkit, and they were on the radio, what I mean? On TRL, and I was like watching tons of MTV.
I was right there with you, man. Yeah.
That was their heyday, and it was like I was at the skate park, and like back in '98, like inline rollerblading, aggressive inline was like
huge.
Yeah, it like wasn't lame, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it was, I don't know, but
no, like they were putting it on X Games and like that kind of stuff. Like it had a moment.
Yeah, exactly, and it like went hand in hand with like the nu metal culture. So I was like rocking my Jinkos and had my ball chain and big ass Senate t-shirt and stuff. And
other than the skating part of it, I think we had very similar interests.
yeah. So I was like just rocking nu metal stuff, and that was kind of like where it started as far as like the modern culture of the time.
Yeah, and it's another thing I was thinking about when I was coming over here to talk to you is that you're very open about like these subcultures that you're really into, like whether be it nu metal. I saw you posting something about like Juggalos and Insane Clown Posse.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Oh yes. Well, I've been to the Gathering.
Jealous.
Oh, dude, it was amazing.
So jealous.
Dude, it was so sick. It was.
Did you get baptized in Fago?
No, I stayed away, so full story and full disclosure is that I went the year that Flostradamus played. And so
the infamous beer bottle.
Yeah. And so I saw they were going, and I just called up Kurt, and I was like, yeah, I'll see you there. I was like, it's like, if you're going to be there, I'm coming. Yeah. Not even asking. I was just like, yeah, I'll be there. And yeah, man, it was insane. Like we had a blast. Their show, although they got shit thrown at them and Josh got cut up and it was a little rough. I mean, by the end of their hour on stage, the whole crowd was with them. It was a crazy show. And we actually went back and met ICP later and just hung out with them. And just walking around, the whole vibe, man, was like, I don't know, it was not what I was expecting.
Yeah, that's always been my feeling. I've gone to see them like three times now in the past like year and a half.
Oh, really?
With my two managers who are also avid ICP fans now. Because like, I'm not going to lie to you, like it was sort of like an ironic thing
of course.
When we first got into it, like with like internet culture and stuff, kind of thinking it's funny or whatever. And because I was actually into them when I was like in 4th, 5th grade.
Yeah, I had a CD single of them that I remember very strongly.
Oh yeah,
from like when I was 17.
I had like Hocus Pocus or something, or Boogie Woogie Woo or some shit. Anyways, I went to the show and it immediately went from like kind of irony, like, oh, we should just go see this just to see it, to like, holy shit, like this is so cool.
Right.
Like we have to go every time they're in LA.
Yeah.
Like this is the most amazing thing we've ever seen.
I'm that way with Guar.
That's on my bucket list. That's next.
See, I've seen Guar probably like 10 or more times, and it's the same thing. Anytime they're in my proximity, I have to go. It's just one of my favorite things. And yeah, man, the ICP thing too, it was the community, which I feel like is going to be a theme of this whole conversation. Like everybody there, we clearly did not belong there and we're like fish out of water. But everyone was so nice and so welcoming and just like free and open. It's like a lot of nudity.
Yeah.
Kind of like almost like a nudist vibe.
Yeah, when you're here, you're family, brother.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? when you're here, you're a juggalo. When you're at the show, you're a juggalo.
Pretty much.
I paint my face now, like when I go, and like I've got a lot of merch now, and I've got a Juggalos Against Sanity card game right here. Yeah.
Is that like their version of Cards Against Humanity?
It is.
Oh my God, dude.
It's amazing.
I didn't know that existed.
Their merch is unparalleled. It's goals.
That's the thing, man. They're brilliant business-wise, which is another fascinating part of their whole thing to me. It's the business side of it. And they've always been independent. They've done it all themselves. It's the empire that they've built just on that DIY mentality. That should inspire anybody who's trying to make it, It's wild to me. But to take it back to you and the nu metal subculture and all that, were you involved? You grew up playing some instrument, right?
Yeah, I started playing bass, but by that point I was kind of out of it. And I found myself, which is strange, I found myself very into like being a very, technically strong bass player. So I got immediately into like Primus, like Les Claypool stuff, Bootsy Collins, like funk.
Oh, so you just picked up the bass really quickly?
Yeah, I picked up the bass very, very quickly. It came very natural to me. It's funny because all my friends were like, "Oh yeah, he's gonna suck," and I was pretty good, right off the jump.
Yeah.
And so I picked it up. I had a very strong, I really, really liked to get better at the instrument technically, and I wanted to be the best. So I was picking up slapping, tapping, listening to guys like Les Claypool, Victor Wooten, Marcus Miller, and then that escalated into me playing upright bass.
Okay.
And so by the time I was like a sophomore, junior in high school, I was deep into the straight ahead jazz world.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, and so that's what I was doing. Improv was everything for me, and I ended up going to Berklee College of Music.
Right. Yeah, I read that. And it's so interesting, man, because I played trumpet throughout high school, and I was in the jazz band. So it's it was like jazz by day, new metal by night, basically.
Yeah. It's just like polar, extremes. You know what I mean?
I don't know what that connection is, but I had the exact same thing. And so for you, you're going through, you're playing bass, you're getting excited about these, metal and the culture of it and all of that. Was it ever a thought that this was something you wanted to do more seriously? I mean, obviously you were spending a lot of time on it, but did you, even that young, were you looking at it as there's more to do here?
Maybe in the middle of high school, it was kind of whoa, I love playing bass. I love music. I've always loved music. Music has spoke to me in a way that is it's so powerful. It shapes the way I look on the outside.
Yeah,
that's how deep music, and I think people in general. It has a extremely large power that's sort of unparalleled within any form of art. I think to shape a human.
I think that's true, man. That's beautiful. But I will say, I mean, I think for some people, the way you're talking about is the way I felt about it at that age too. There was just nothing else, Exactly. I agree that it's powerful for anybody, but I don't know if it's genetic or it's situational, but there's something for some people, you and me and a bunch of other people that we know, I just got bit, I was there was nothing else after a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be some connection with the brain and the ear. It's the way that I process audio, auditory stimulation is, I don't know. It's I can see a whole picture in my head. I can see literally colors and stuff.
I see colors too. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's whoa, this music is so beautiful, or this music makes me feel whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Were your parents musical, or was there music in the house growing up?
There's a lot of music in the house. My dad, shout out Papa Texas. He put me onto a lot of cool stuff he was a big jazz head. He liked Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Paul Chambers, Charles Mingus. And he loved fusion jazz. He was a big Return to Forever was one of his favorite bands. He told me who Jaco Pastorius was.
Oh, wow.
He was you need to listen to Jaco Pastorius. He's the best bass player ever. And Stanley Clarke. Yeah. And so my dad, who knows, he's not a very creative person, technically or anything. Right. But he, knew that Stanley Clarke and Jaco were the dons, and so that was really cool to hear that from somebody who just grew up in that era and just appreciated fine musicianship.
Right. How did it continue on? Were you so you're doing upright bass, doing the jazz thing, performing in some capacity. Were you doing bands at all? Yeah,
I was doing bands. I was doing gig work, straight ahead cafe stuff. That's where it started, just kind of gigs around town. When I went to college, then I started getting linked up with better players.
Right.
And eventually that kind of led me to just doing studio work in general and playing with a lot of different people, doing my own jam sessions, starting my own kind of bands. I had an Afrobeat 10-piece group that we would do Fela Kuti style music, Budo's band. And then I was in a wedding band that was pretty high end, cost a couple G's to book us. And we were doing we had packs with mics, or not mics, headphones that were running tracks, so we'd be playing Rihanna.
That's so cool, man. And so let's talk about Berklee for a minute. Going out there for the listeners who don't know, Berklee College of Music, one of the super well-known music schools in the country. That pretty much everybody who's there is a top-notch musician in some way.
Yeah,
right?
Mostly.
And first of all, how did your parents feel about you going to a music school like that? Was this something they were really pushing, supporting?
My parents were always very cool. My parents afforded me like any opportunity that I kind of wanted to get into. They were like, well, we'll buy him the skateboard, you know, and we'll see how it goes, you know, and then we'll get him a bass. You know, he really wants a bass because I'm super passionate about anything I do. And I was like, I want a bass, you know, and so they're like, all right, we'll get you a bass. So I had like, you know, they got me the $180 Ibanez, you know, or whatever. And so, yeah, they were cool with it, you know, actually they were pretty cool with it. And they saw that, you know, my skills were pretty good. I was like kind of winning awards and stuff like that. Oh, nice. So
you don't have to say kind of. You can win awards. So talk about like getting to Berklee, doing the bass thing. Who were you surrounded with? Was everybody there kind of trying to do similar things, or was it a pretty diverse cast of musicians you were surrounded with?
It kind of went through phases. There was a bit of everything there. Mostly a lot of like jazz kids, a lot of engineer type kids. I went to college with the guys from Loudpack.
I was going to ask you about that. Was that at the same time?
Yeah, same time.
Kenny Did you know him while you were there?
Yeah, we were friends.
Kenny and
before,
Ryan?
I knew them before Loudpack shit.
That's amazing.
Yeah, shout out Kenny and Ryan. Love those guys. Still talk to those guys to this day. And seeing their glow up has been amazing.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, Kenny, especially right now, a.k.a. Kenny Beats.
Crushing.
I mean, dude, but we can bring it back to you too. There's these like phases of careers, right?
Yeah.
And people kind of, you know, you go through one phase and then you come back as sort of the next evolution, the next iteration. And to watch what he's doing right now, it's fucking crazy, man.
Yeah, dude, it's nuts. It's nuts. So, I mean, it started very much in the jazz thing. You know, I wanted to be like a just total badass, upright, straight ahead jazz burner. You know what I mean? Just like burn down tracks, you know, and that sort of evolved over time. I was listening to a lot of like kind of, I guess, like IDM stuff, and like Flying Lotus had come out around that time, and like blew everybody's mind with the Los Angeles record and 1983.
Sure.
And
because a lot of those records were very jazz based, right?
Totally.
Or jazz influenced.
Yeah, we were freaking out when we were listening to you know, his records, being like, how did he get his drums like this? Like, it's like off, but it's not, or like whatever. We were, you know, this is like, fuck, man, 2008.
Right, of course.
2009.
Well, and this is probably your first exposure to electronic production and thinking about it in those terms too, right? If you start in the live setting and you know how to play the instrument, the learning how to make the recording of the instrument sound good is a totally different thing, let alone learning how to synthesize the instrument, right?
Oh yeah. You know, I was at the time doing like a dual major kind of thing, so I was doing business and performance, jazz performance. So on this one side, I'm like really considering like branding, crafting, marketing, you know, all these different things, and on the other side, it's like technical knowledge, like the vast expanse of chords and like deep harmony theory, melodic theory. But then towards my later years, you know, that's when I really met some guys, and we all sort of had the same desire to really get into the production thing. We really wanted that. We saw, you know, somebody exposed me to Hudson Mohawk, and it changed a lot for me. Hearing his sound and him being like, yeah, I listen to a lot of Dirty South like rap music. You know, I love Gucci, and I was like, me too. You know, like what? Like people out of the South are fucking with this? Like, oh my God.
Sure.
Especially in like Scotland. Like that's insane.
Yeah, all the way around the world. And to think that maybe, you know, this culture is as big as it is in your own head, you know, like other people think it's as important as you do, right? And so, like all throughout Berklee, were you trying to make anything production-wise, or were you focusing mainly on like the bass, the business, the major?
Not until, let's see, I went to Berklee in like 2007. Not until like 2010 did I got the like, you know, I got the little crack at Ableton, you know, and I got some plugins, got the waves, you know what I mean? And got all that stuff, and like Silent, or I don't know. I don't even know, man.
Shout out to Silent. I still use Silent.
Dude, Silent slaps.
I love Silent.
Silent slaps.
Yeah.
So I got all that stuff, and I started writing, you know what I mean? And I was always into like sampling and like Pete Rock, and like had a big like, you know, stoner 90s hip hop phase and all that. And so in 2010 is really when it, like, I was like, you know what, this might be like something that could work. Cause I was kind of tired of being a sideman at that point.
What do you mean sideman? Just like being like playing in the back of the band?
Yeah, playing in the band, you know, playing other people's songs, not being like, having my own brand. You know what I mean? That I was the
Sure.
brand of like, well, I was part of somebody else's brand.
Sure.
You know, and part of somebody else's band or anything like that.
And at the time, were you living off of music? Like, you know, whether it's the wedding band or whatever, like, were you cobbling it together?
Kind of. Like, I was still in school, and so I was fortunate enough to, you know,
Yeah, that helps.
have the old rent supporting me through college, with the hopes that I'd make a career.
Yeah, I mean, my parents did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be more thankful
Yeah,
for that.
seriously,
Yeah.
super, super, super grateful to Papa, Mama, Tex.
And so what does getting out of college look like? I mean, were you, well, actually, even before I asked that, like throughout all of this, is your mindset always like, this is a career, I don't know how yet, but like, this is what I'm going to be doing down the line?
I mean, at the time, kind of. I was living much more of a wild party lifestyle back then.
Yeah.
And we can talk more about that later. But
Yeah.
It was
Well, yeah, sometimes there isn't a plan. you know?
there wasn't really,
Yeah.
you know, and me and my 5 buddies, you know, started a little crew and actually got a lot of traction. And that's how I met Josh and Kurt. And we were still in college then. We were hanging out on my buddy's couch.
Okay.
Sitting in a circle.
And that's MOD, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wanted to talk about this because the MOD crew, the name, it was funny because I would always see it, and you guys were related to lots of people that I knew or had connections to people I knew, but somehow it was always, there was a couple degrees of separation so that I never totally, like I didn't feel connected to you guys in a way where I was like, I know what they're doing, like I know who they are, all of that. And it's interesting to hear how it all started. So was everybody from that crew meeting up at Berklee? Like, were you all in Boston?
We were all students.
That's interesting.
We were all a year apart too, which was kind of weird. It was like a mixed group of friends, but we all had a love for electronic music and getting blazed and drinking.
Yeah.
To be quite frank.
Yeah.
Maybe some other stuff.
Hey,
and
man, that brings people together.
yeah, and
Absolutely.
and that's how it started, man. And we were like, let's put out. And it was right when SoundCloud was like really kind of becoming the platform to release music on. Twitter was still like not heavily used by DJs, but some were.
Being early to Twitter, that helped me too, man. Like, that was huge.
To this day,
Yeah.
still helping. And that we noticed that and we were like, dude, let's release like a compilation. We're going to be like a boy band of DJs. I don't know if we thought of that consciously, but that's kind of what it looked like.
Right.
And people hadn't really started DJ crews. We also were like, we don't really like dubstep. We would much rather use like 808s in our like as our bass, because we were all listening to rap so much,
Right.
you know, and like we're like, let's use 808s. And dude, it just was kind of like right place, right time. And other people had that same idea. Like Kurt Josh, Hudson
Right.
was doing it.
Absolutely.
Matt Decent released those free Gucci mixtapes,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
were
yeah.
huge for me.
Oh, dude, that was, I had a remix on either the first or the second one. And that was sort
I
of
used to listen to it, bro.
Oh, hell yeah. But for me too, it was a moment because it was all these different things that I loved and bringing them together, and then to have like a label actually stand behind it, that gave me a lot of confidence that like maybe this thing actually has some legs and maybe it's not just like these weird things I like to do.
Yeah, I mean,
know?
shout out to Matt Decent for being like a year or two ahead of the curve.
100%,
with that. Those
man.
Sinden did the second one,
I know,
which was so
dude.
sick. Birdish edition.
Yeah, man. I mean, like there was so many sort of like foundational things going on at that time. Mad Decent, like, you know, Paul and Wes over there, visionaries, like Fool's Gold with A-Track and
Absolutely.
Catch Dubs, visionaries. There was so, I don't know, man. I can get super nostalgic about that era because it felt so free, you know, like, and just so many people were creating at the same time. It feels, I don't know, and this could just be in my own head now, but I feel like there's a lot more rules now, or at least people want there to be more rules, and that bums me out sometimes.
I don't know, man. There's so much noise now.
Well, that's part of it,
You know what I
too.
mean? There's just so much noise. Like, I remember when Kenny Beats gave me my first like good sample pack. You know what I mean? And it was so cherished, dude. Like it was harder to become a producer. It was harder to get good sounds. It was harder to really do it.
Yeah, it was scarce, right? I mean, just the idea that you would have a good sample pack, that's hard. It was hard to find a good sample pack.
Exactly. You're scouring the internet, trying to find this stuff, and you got to get it from other people, and they don't want to give it to you and all that stuff. And nowadays it's just not like that.
Yeah.
And so it felt a little more cherished back then.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Those are my feelings.
Yeah, I agree.
And definitely more free.
Yeah. And it's not to like talk shit about what's going on in 2018, which I'm also very stoked on, but it's just a different time. And, for me coming up, I think you're right that it was just the work that we had to put in just to like find what are now sort of considered common tools, There's something about that makes me value those experiences more.
I'm glad I came up in that time. I'm glad I had that experience in like 2011, 12.
Yeah.
And seeing the industry change over those years, and seeing SoundCloud change, seeing Twitter change, seeing Instagram become like massive,
right?
And seeing kids come and go. You know what I mean?
I want to know what the next thing's going to be, man. I always like have these circular conversations where I'm just like, I want to see, but I don't know what it is.
I'm like, can we just stick with what we have for like a little while longer? Like I like it like it is. I can manage this. Like let's just keep it rolling.
It's true, man. But even like, I don't know. We don't have to go super far down this road, but you think about, Spotify is like the ruler of the day, right? Mm-hmm. And for what you do, I feel like it's more suited for like the SoundCloud shit where you can just like get this kind of underground movement behind you and blow it up that way. Like, what are your tools now? Like, is SoundCloud still a valuable tool for you?
Spotify's tough, man. I mean, as like a hardcore DJ putting out like, 200 BPM, which is, there's a long road in between 2012 and this now.
Yeah.
But
no, and we'll jump back. But.
Yeah. It's more for me with mixes, SoundCloud for sure. I mean, it's really the only way to do it. Yeah. I mean, there's other ways, but I put them out on SoundCloud, and for me, that's a huge tool right now. I'm heavy on Twitter. I'm heavy on Instagram, especially in the story. I like to like talk a lot in my story.
I've noticed that, man.
Yeah, because you know why? I get more views.
Yeah,
when I'm talking about stuff, and I get more views.
Well, sure. I mean, that makes total sense, man. And I think people like it. If you're talking to them, they like to feel like they know you. And I think, as we're talking about Spotify and sort of things becoming more corporatized and maybe a little more distant, it's important to find any way that you can still connect with the people you want to hear your music, right?
Absolutely. And we do Spotify, we do Apple Music, we do it all, man. You know what I mean?
Oh, of course.
But there's like, I don't know, SoundCloud's still kicking. I had a track like do pretty well on SoundCloud. Oh yeah,
I've been seeing the mix you just put out bouncing all around.
Yeah, and it's good. And really what I'm focused on is so more in the social media realm. Right. It's more in the Twitter and Instagram and Facebook groups that I have.
Smart, man.
That's where, because I want to build a fan base of engaging fans. You know what I mean?
Well, exactly. I think that's that's a very smart thing you just said, because especially in this era, what you have to do is like foster that community. It's all about that. And it's what we were talking about at the very beginning of this too. Like, not only is that a good way to sort of get around these more corporate roadblocks, but like those are also the people who will be supporting you 10 years from now in the same way that you and I are sitting here talking about bands we loved, 20 years ago.
Exactly, man. And it's just so crucial, because it's like, dude, I see these kids, get these playlistings and get like 1 million plays on their song, and they're not playing any shows.
Right.
They're not doing anything. It's like, does that really matter? Is that just some dude up at the Spotify headquarters dropping your song in a playlist that has like, yeah, you're gonna get some fans, yeah, you're gonna get some like stuff, but like, dude, at least from what I've seen, is the people that are, digging what I'm doing right now, they're really digging it. And they like that I'm like out there, providing a world to enter into in North America. This is the hardcore world. Come join me.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm I'm a cowboy looking motherfucker, but like, hey man, that's just my shit.
Yeah, dude, I think that even helps. Like,
it's definitely working. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it's totally me, so it's good.
Yeah, and what you said about building a world, I've said that verbatim on this show so many times. I think that's like one of the best things you can do. And it's not really manufactured. It's just things you're actually interested in, and you're just kind of, instead of like, you know, like you said, like ICP, when you first went, it was like ironic. And I was very much the same way. And for a while, it's like you wouldn't really want to talk about it to everybody, you know? It's almost something you were just like, oh, yeah, I did it, but whatever. But once you actually are like, oh, no, I went and it was cool, it can be surprising to see how many other people will embrace you just for like being open about things you like. I don't know, man. It's this weird repression that, at least personally, I've had for a long time about like, well, I do like this, but if I say this, I don't know if people will be behind me. But every single time you just go forward and there's just like open about it, I don't know. I always get a positive reaction from that.
I'm just not. I don't know if this is relevant, but I'm just so not a sit on the stairs and stare off to the side guy. You know what I mean? Like that's like not necessarily me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like I'm so much more like on just this loud like whatever, like let's have fun and let's be into like weird shit. Like my stuff is for the true freaks. My shit's for the freaks. You know what I mean? And that's like some ICP shit.
Were you always like that though, or is that a more
kind
recent
of
thing?
I've kind of always been like into like high visibility. I've gone through phases. You know what I mean? Right now it's like all the like puzzle pieces aligned, everything just kind of clicked, and it was like 29 years of like stuff just all like collided together into this like ball of like, oh wait, this is gonna work, I think. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it has been, which is cool.
Oh yeah, man.
And people like it, man, you know.
100%. I still love it, man. And it's, you know, again, it's those sort of extreme cultures or subcultures. I mean, there's just nothing else like it. And so to me, it was like finding what you said earlier, finding this other world that I didn't know existed. And you can go there and you visit this world and it's a totally alien. I don't know, man. It was just, I love shit like that. And so with the MOD crew, and you guys started off, you made a bunch of noise kind of like right out of the gate, at least in my perception of it. What was, you know, with you guys as a crew and then also as individual artists, did you have sort of like goals as a group, or were you all just kind of like pushing each other forward and just making what you wanted to make? Like, was there an overall like vision for it?
Man, I mean, we put out like 7 mixtapes in a year.
Yeah.
And we were just cranking them, man. And
to me, you were always associated, like the MOD crew in general was like sort of a high taste level. There was something about it that set it apart a little bit from what a lot of other people were doing. And I don't know if I can put my finger on it.
We had like a sort of like nasty taste in our mouth for kind of like EDM at the time.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
there was a little bit of separation, right?
Yeah. And it was like, we really liked guys like the We Did It crew. We were really into like, you know, Hudson and Rusty and, you know, like Machine Drum and EPROM and all these the guys, you know, because we thought they were very like classy about it,
right?
You know, which they are to this day.
Oh yeah,
just stayed true, stayed in their lane, doing their thing. Shout out all of those people.
Absolutely.
And we kind of had that thing where, but me though, I've always kind of like, you know, at the time I used to make a joke. It's like I'm low key like a really into dubstep, you know, like maybe high key into dubstep. Right, yeah. You know what I mean? And like, as the years kind of went on, I got progressively more and more EDM. I've always loved it. It's fun. I like it. You know, it's my voice. And some of the other guys have drifted further into behind the scenes production or, you know, other stuff that just isn't so like, their tracks just don't have buildups, mine do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's hilarious, but it's also... It's always been funny to me because I could never understand. There's been this separation of sort of whatever you want to call it, the higher-minded or like more tasteful artists versus the EDM guys. That's literally kind of the only difference, right?
Yeah, it's like a build-up.
Yeah.
It's like, does your song have a build-up or not? Or is it like, I don't know. There's some like middle ground.
I mean, of course, and you can intellectualize about what the aims of the music are, all of that. But to me, I'm the same as you. I always like both.
Yeah.
And I never understood why they had to be kept so separate.
Yeah, yeah. And I think another part of it is that it's like something to do with like a lot of chord structure too. It ends up coming down to like harmony, and it ends up coming down to like what they're using as like the primary leads. You know what I mean? Because I think the average person can be like, this is more mainstream than this. You know, they like hear, you know, G. Jones or something, and they're like, whoa, this is trippy, you know? And then they hear, you know, some
Marshmallow or something.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, oh, wow, this is like super mainstream.
Right.
You know? And both are valid.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, both of those two artists I'm a big fan of. And I think you're right. I never really thought about it that way. Maybe it is just about the actual like chord progressions and the melodies and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sound design too.
Yeah.
You know, you can definitely hear like, I think the average like listener is like I think the average human ear, I should say, is actually very intelligent. People know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's not everyone has the vocabulary to like say how they feel about it, but you're absolutely right. I think people can tell very quickly kind of what the deal is.
Yeah, exactly.
Leaving college, did you leave Boston at that point?
Yeah. I was on APA at the time. I like, you know, it was just a kind of a whirlwind of like a year. And so I did a little like mini tour with the Floss guys back then. Like,
oh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, like the very end of the Underground Nights tour. I went on the
sick.
West Coast dates with them and direct support, and I was like, oh my God, what's my life?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the vibe at those shows back in that day, like that's another time that brought me back to like those new metal vibes where it's just like, whoa, something is happening here.
Oh yeah, it was crazy, man, and so we did that, and it ended up bringing me to LA. I'd moved to Dallas for a little bit, and then, you know, I moved out to LA and kind of did like a year and a half in LA, and yeah, there's more to that story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's get into it. Like, as far as, you know, moving around, starting to tour a little bit, getting a taste of like the DJ touring side of it. Where were you at musically? Were you kind of just putting out a bunch of songs around that time?
Yeah, I was doing like a lot of like Jersey club trap hybrid sort of, but always kind of keeping like some, like I used to use a lot of R&B samples and stuff.
Yeah, and you had like some footwork influences.
Oh yeah, huge. My first tracks were like all 160 with like, you know, Keith Sweat samples and stuff.
Right.
You know? And then I did like some more like Jersey club banger trap stuff, and that's what actually like ended up getting me some more clout and play. But I had a lot of like listener type fans who were listening to the other stuff. And I was always kind of in between those two things, you know? And then I really did start kind of hammering down the Jersey stuff. And, you know, when I moved to LA and man, like I want to say it all like went well, but it just like didn't.
It rarely does, man.
You know, I was like partying way too hard, man. And I ended up like really throwing my life down the gutter in like end of 2014, beginning of 2015.
Was the partying basically just like getting in the way of you know, pushing the career forward?
I mean, let's just get into it,
man.
Yeah. Full on disclosure,
Absolutely.
Which I'm super open about this stuff because, you know, a lot of people can resonate with this. Like I'm sober, and I've been sober for like 3 years and 9 months, completely sober. And, you know, I at the end of 2014, I found myself, and I've been going through this my whole life, like going in and out of drug addiction, and gnarly drug addiction. Like not, you know, I was going all the way.
Like heroin.
Heroin, meth, you know, the whole deal.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of 2015, that's like, you know, when stuff came to a head, and I was in just utter psychosis, lost everything. Car's gone, girl's gone, you know, gonna lose my apartment, you know, just completely destitute, completely alone, and just so paranoid.
Wow.
Yeah, it was super bad. I hadn't slept for days and weeks on end. And, you know, it came to a point where I went into treatment, and then that sort of ushered in the new phase of like my whole life.
Right.
That was almost 4 years ago now.
Well, what is that? And I say this as somebody who has not had that kind of experience. Like, what is that moment like? Like, how do you, you know, going to treatment, kind of realizing that like now you need to do this? how do you get to that point? Is it like a single moment where it like everything crystallizes?
Yeah.
Or?
Funny. No, it was.
Oh shit! I did not mean to do that.
No, it's good. It's good. Yes, more. The more of that story is yes, but no, it. I always knew that I was an addict. I was like, I can't stop when I start. I party too hard. All my friends knew it. I knew it. The only way that I kind of could keep going was by like rationalizing that and romanticizing that aspect. Like, yeah, I'm a hope to die dope fiend kind of thing.
Right. And there's this weird perception that like to be a good artist, you have to embrace darkness, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I was full in that and wasn't doing anything.
Right.
Literally was doing nothing.
Oh, exactly.
Except drugs. And it came to a point where I truly, because I had been kind of going in and out of like trying to get cleaned up and then not cleaning up, just smoking weed, not smoking weed, you know what I mean? Doing that whole thing, trying to manage. And what it really came down to was that like I really came to believe that like my life was unmanageable because of this. I would just never admit that like that fact that when I use, I always go back to what I really want, which is like the really hard stuff. And maybe not immediately, but over time, and my life just becomes completely destitute. And that's something that I just wasn't willing to admit. I was like, well, no, it's just this.
Right.
It's just that.
If I change this one
thing.
If
I go to LA, I'll be fine. I just got to get out of Dallas and I got to get out of Boston and I got to, and dude, the problem, I took myself everywhere. And that's, you know what I mean? Yeah. That's what ultimately got me in. And it came to a point where I was just totally alone. And my friends, the MOD guys, God bless them. They were like, dude, we're done. Like, you got to go do something and we'll talk once you figure your thing out. Because like us being here, my parents, same thing. Us helping you or like what we deem as like helping you is just enabling you, dude.
Right.
And so I got to that point where it was like, dude, either I change and do this one thing that everybody's been telling me to do for 6 years or more. Like,
right.
Nobody was like, just smoke weed, dude. Nobody was like, just do this.
Yeah, the message was coming in loud and
Go
clear.
to yoga. They were like, no, dude, like you need to go to treatment. Like you need to go do that thing that all those sober people do. And so that's what I ended up doing. I was finally like, well, there's a lot of like evidence that this works. Right. There's a lot of evidence over here that this other stuff doesn't work.
Right.
So let me just try the team that works for a little bit and we'll see what happens. And I ended up loving it.
Really?
Yeah.
Like
loving
you took to the whole process.
Oh my God. It was like, like, oh my God, I'm alive. Like, wow. Like I can be a functioning member of society and like pay my rent.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, man. Do you think like subconsciously you just sort of like X'd that out? You'll be like, well, I'll never be like that person, Like, you know what I mean?
Former
like,
self or?
Yeah, like when you were before treatment, like do you think at a certain point just subconsciously you were kind of just like, well, I'll never be like that well-adjusted person, so fuck it.
Oh, absolutely, dude. That's how I had to like, because I knew what I was doing was bad. It's not like you're like, doing hard drugs and you're like, wow, I should really be doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like, I can't stop doing this every single day. Like, well, I'm such an artist.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is so dumb. I was like so far from an artist at that point.
Well, of course. I mean, and that's, there's all these weird things about that if you're in a dark place, and this doesn't have to be about drugs, this could be about anything, but if you're as a person in a dark place, there's this weird perception as an artist that if you get help or if you change something or even if, to take it further, like if you're super depressed, if you're clinically depressed, I've talked to a bunch of people where it's like, well, they tell me I need meds, but I'm worried if I take like meds or something, I won't be able to write music or I won't be able to paint or whatever it is, or it'll be different. My brain, I won't have an artist brain. And all of that is so backwards to me. Like I was, this is random, but I was just listening to this interview with Conan O'Brien, and he was talking about how he's had anxiety issues most of his career, and only recently has like gone on medication for it, and how he was so scared that like he wouldn't be funny anymore. And then finally, somebody close to him was like, actually, it might just be a lot easier for you if you do that. And then he went on medication. He was like, yeah, I'm exactly the same, except I'm not anxious all the time. and like I can be much better at what I do.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we get, I guess just culturally, like we romanticize darkness.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like starting off, that was like part of the appeal of it, was like it seemed, sort of sexy and like way back?
Oh yeah,
like,
for sure. It was the thing where it was like, no, I want to try drinking and I want to smoke weed. You know what I mean? It was like, I'm definitely down for that.
Yeah.
I'm also a impulsive guy, like I'm the kind of guy who's like, hey, people are jumping off that cliff in the water. I'm going to go jump off the cliff in the water. Oh, he just did a backflip off that diving board. Let's go do a backflip off the diving board.
Right.
Like that's my kind of like mentality. I'm a very like, just if I see it, I'm going for it.
Yeah. Quick decision.
Exactly. And so, yeah, it all just kind of happened. And dude, the minute that I started taking substances, I immediately noticed that it was very hard for me to not want to take those substances on a very, very regular basis. And obviously it got worse and worse over time. That's how the addiction works.
Sure.
It's a progressive kind of thing. Even when you stop, if you go back, it's going to be, you'll pick up right where you left off. Maybe like you might get a month.
Right.
But, like whatever.
And you were saying, I think before we started recording, that sort of whatever you do in life, you go hard on it and you can like get pretty focused on something, right?
Absolutely.
Have you been able now to sort of channel those tendencies to work for you
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. And that's I totally believe that aspect of my personality has gotten me to, where I am right now since July 28th, which was, July 28th, I think, which was when I played Wasteland.
Right.
That's kind of like the marker for this era of Lil Texas, was that this thing happened and everything has happened since then. And now it's the end of the year and it's probably the best I've ever had in my career right now.
Yeah, man, and I can see it, and I love watching it happen, and sort of to get to that point. So you go through treatment, you come out, feeling better. Was it sort of like a re-energized, like you wanted to jump back into music? Like, how did those few years? How do you go from there till now?
Oh man, it's been such a journey.
Yeah.
Oh my God, like I had nothing, dude. And my parents were at the point of like, hey, look, you got one more shot. We're gonna help you, get through treatment. We'll help you out, get on your feet at a sober living, whatnot. And then good luck.
Yeah.
We're tired. We're done, but we love you, so we're gonna give you this one more shot. Because I already kind of like threw away a couple other shots.
Sure, man.
And so I went to treatment, I went to outpatient, and then I went to a sober living in West LA. And that sober living was where I met my current manager. That's where I met a slew of my friends who ended up going through that sober living. I ended up managing that sober living. So I went from, being the client to like being the dude with the keys to the medicine cabinet, and that's what I always tell people, like, I got the keys to the medicine cabinet. If anything's a change in me, that should show you, you
Absolutely.
know? And so I did that for a long time, man, for about 16 months.
Oh, wow.
I was, doing that. I was, got another job, and kind of built my life up while making music, and kind of just getting my feet.
So you were still, at least on the side, still making music.
Oh yeah. And I didn't really know what I wanted, I didn't know like what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be like a functioning member of society.
Of course.
Because I had no clue how to do it. And I ended up doing it, get my own place and, do my thing and get back into the groove. And honestly, I got to a place within this year where I was getting ready to quit music. I had completely let it go. I was like, you know what? I got to be okay without Lil Texas. I got to be, because there's so much validation that comes from the internet.
Oh man, yeah.
And like people liking my stuff.
And it's very hard to let that go.
And the issue with it is that it's so fleeting. That kind of happiness is fleeting happiness. And with a guy like a brain like I have, which is I want more. Yeah. It's addiction is just a disease of more. I need more. No matter where I get, I need more.
Oh, and I mean, social media, there's a lot of connections and a lot to talk about as far as addiction and social media.
Absolutely, man. And so like I was like, you know what? Sam needs to be okay, And so I got to this place where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of focus on me right now and just kind of put music on the side, just maybe do some things here and there if they come my way. And I somehow got booked on Wasteland and Because I was spinning hard dance in my sets and doing like fast Jersey music.
Well, yeah, and so throughout this time, you were still releasing music. Like I remember, I think one of the last times we ran into each other was, I don't know, a year or two back with Brills with Sammy, and he had started the Twonk label, and you had put some records out there. And I remember. What was that one record? It's called like Go Fast.
Yeah, Go Fast.
It was just Go Fast.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, maybe, I guess that's sort of an obvious blueprint for what you would end up doing.
Yeah.
But I remember hearing that and I got really stoked because I hadn't heard your music for a while. And then I was like, oh shit, like this is different and this is dope.
Shout out Sammy, dude. I love that dude. He's my boy.
I love him.
Sorry,
so much.
I'll call you back too, Sammy. By the way, he called me earlier. But yeah, dude, that's like one of my best homies, man. And apart from being a homie, he's such like a mentor and somebody who like, if it wasn't for those days on Twonk and doing stuff with Twonk, I don't think I would be where I'm at today. So
man, I mean, yeah, he's a very inspirational guy. A close friend of mine too. I couldn't love him more, man. And it's cool to see him. I was just talking about the LS Dream project too, and like
it's great
what he's doing with that and all the plans for it. And you can just tell it's just like it's so authentically him, and he's so stoked about it. Like
absolutely, that's exactly how I feel. I've told him that so many times.
Yeah,
I'm like, dude, like this is so you. Like I love it.
Yeah,
I'm so happy you did this.
The whole project, man, is so sick to me. And honestly, man, that's part of it too. Like I look at you and I feel the same way with what you're doing now, where it's just like, all the walls have come down and this is just like, hey, this is me, man. Like it's so authentic and it's so weird because that's a hard thing to just decide to do one day, like that's a hard thing to intellectualize. But then when you see it in front of you, it's like, well, obviously somebody is going to connect with this more than any amount of like branding and thinking you can do,
And ultimately, that just makes the branding easy.
Yes.
It makes it so much easier.
Yes. And that's not to say that like thought hasn't gone into the project. But
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And oh man, it's just like, it's funny because I did the Wasteland thing and I love hardcore.
I mean, so let's talk about like how you came to this new idea. Like obviously your music was literally getting faster.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah. And at a certain point, did you just sort of find yourself making hard dance and just saying, fuck it, let's go with it? Like, how did it work?
I had this idea of like blending like hardstyle and hardcore like into like club music, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like this could be a thing, but it's a little esoteric, a little hard to like latch on to. It's a little too like whatever. Even though it had some love. Go Fast had some like hardstyle kicks in it.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know, man. I just fell in love with it. It's just like, dude, I was on the car ride home today. I was like, man, hardcore is fucking sick. I was like, this is so tight. I was like, this is like, no wonder this genre has just lasted so long. No wonder they've like figured out immortality. No wonder that kids are so diehard about it, that there's this lasting power with this genre, because it's just like, there's something about it. I don't know what it is, but it's just there's a level of pride and stuff. So
it's so, not to cut you off, but I think it's so extreme, right? It's taken to such a far extent that you're in or you're out, right?
Exactly.
And it's like, I respect anyone who just sort of like, it's like chipping away at the stone to find, you find the perfect diamond inside. Like, I don't know how much further you can go. Like, it's, people are out there on the outer reaches of sound and of like the concept of what this music can be. That shit is exciting to me.
Yeah. Well, and, I just found my ear has always gravitated towards hardcore. It's always run. Those are the kicks that I like. Those are the sounds that I like. It's just like, it's like metal to me. It's like punk. It's like, it just really resonates in my core. And when I started like taking that production side of it, cause like I'm transparent about this. It's like, people know. It's like, I didn't necessarily like make hardcore tracks that were being released. You know what I mean? And when I decided to do this, that's just where my ear went. That's just where it naturally gravitated to. It was like, whoa, I really like 200 BPM. I really, really like it. You know what I mean? Like, this is my shit. And after that, the thought was like, you know what? Like, I want to just make this like bigger in North America. Like I want to spread this message in my own way to the Americans, you know, and I don't want to be Dutch and I don't want to be Italian.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the amount of like, and I can't stress that enough, the amount of like European producers I've met recently and who have been like, dude, thank you so much for what you just said. Like I just met Noise Suppressor. Shout out Noise Suppressor, one of my favorite dudes in the world. Like literally love his music.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I got into making hardcore and I told him that and he was like, bro, and he gave me a big hug. And I was like, thank God. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
of course.
You know, and then he crushed it at Wasteland, Mexico. So
Yeah, well, and I think the way you've approached it, man, not only is it authentic, like we said, but it's very smart because it's you've sort of, I mean, you've been around, right? Like people know the Lil Texas name, and I think it's brilliant that you've kind of, and not that this was your goal, but you've kind of infiltrated like the hip, cool DJ scene in America, right?
Yeah.
And because you're sort of in that sphere, then when you present a hard dance track, people are more open to accepting it and fucking with it, right?
Absolutely.
As opposed to like just some like random hard dance guy who nobody knows or has experience with, then it's easier to just be like, oh, well, that's not my thing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it, you know, it's like I want to make the most palatable, you know, experience, or at least the largest palatability that I can get with what I have going for me, you know, for the user to experience.
Yeah.
You know, for and for people to engage with, so that they can at least give it a chance, you know, or like strike their interests.
Right.
You know, interests. And it's about the visibility of it, and it's about all that, and I just did my own thing. I invented my own kick. It's not a traditional hardcore kick,
Right.
But it has elements of that, and obviously I'm influenced by European hardcore and all that. But it's just my sound, and I truly believe a huge part of it was that like I was saying earlier, that I let music go almost entirely, almost let it all go. And that's the funny thing about life, is that when you let something go, then you get it.
Yeah, dude.
It was like, I don't even care about music anymore. And then like, I don't know, like God or something came down. It was like, just kidding.
Right.
Yeah, you do. And then like gave me some stuff. And I was like, oh.
But dude, I mean, I think another way to phrase that is more or less like you can think about something, you can overthink and just get obsessed with these ideas and sort of miss the forest for the trees, right? Where it's just, if you would just sort of like let it flow and stop like trying to force this one thing, or trying to just like obsess over, you know, this one direction. And if you just kind of let it go and do what you want to do what you're excited about. Like we mentioned Josh and Kurt and the Flosstradamus story. It was the same thing for them. Like their career was kind of done at a certain point. And then I know this because I saw it happen. Like they sort of let music go for a minute and just were like made some trap beats for fun. And then all of a sudden people were like, oh, what's that?
Yeah, exactly.
and it all went from there. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening now, because
absolutely
the reaction I've been seeing to what you're doing, I mean, from all different corners of like the DJ electronic landscape, people are super stoked. I mean, you've been getting like support from all these big name dudes who I wouldn't have expected, right?
I didn't expect it either,
Right.
dude. Like every week somebody else like is like, hey, I really like that Lil Texas song. And I'm like, really? I'm like, you?
Well, sure.
I'm like, hey, I like your music too, bro. You know, kind of thing. And like, who shouted me out the other day? Squinto. He shouted me out.
Okay.
Yeah, Rhythm Dude. And I love when he chops up those tracks. And oh my God, it's so cool to watch.
Yeah.
He's amazing. Kill the Noise. You know, Jake had reached out to me. Pendulum has become, you know, a really like cool dude that we share music facts about. And what's cool is some of the older guys have really like shared a lot of really cool knowledge with me, and that's been so just instrumental. It's like talking about like the 90s, and this guy Basic, or I think that's how you say his name, Basic, I don't know, hardware guy. He was at the Goldie Awards recently. He's been showing me all these videos from LA raves in the 90s, man, and dude, like the gnarliest stuff. And like he's like, Thunderdome, look at LA in the 90s. And I'm like, what?
There's a history to it, man.
Yeah, and so it's cool. The dubstep community's been supporting me, trap community, like even house guys are they like it because a lot of people have foundations in Gabber. A lot of people have that, like you were saying. They have that same story that you just told me. I used to have the crates. I used to have the Paul L. Stack records, whatever.
Yeah.
Rotterdam, and all that stuff, Roughneck. And it's been cool. And I think that people just like that I'm doing whatever I want and doing my own thing and just being like totally like whimsical about it in a way with a lot of like thought,
of course,
but just kind of being me.
Yeah, man, just being you and sort of planting a flag and saying, you know what, actually, this is dope. Like, I like this unironically.
Yeah.
I think there's something so powerful and so freeing about that kind of shit.
Absolutely, man. And you were saying something about, people try to make all these plans and all this stuff. And you made me think about this. If I could like give one just massive, like, I don't know, suggestion to kids or artists or anybody, honestly, anyone, is that first you make, you write, you create, you produce, and then you make plans. And you know what the great thing about that is, Willie, is that the music, the art, it'll tell you what the plans need to be. You don't have to make them before it. The plans are there. You just got to make the stuff first, and then you get the plans from that, man. And I got that from Sammy. So shout out LS Dream for that tidbit of knowledge.
Dream, but I mean, dude, that I couldn't have put that better.
And that is, people try to fit all this stuff into boxes. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to make a techno track, and it's like, I'm going to be Gesaffelstein, or whatever. And I'm like, okay, like, cool. It's like, I just started making hardcore, and then the hardcore tracks that I made told me what to do.
Right, exactly. And it's, if you want to make a techno track like Gesaffelstein, that's cool. But I think the mistake is when you're like, I'm going to make a techno track like Gesaffelstein, then I'm going to send it to this person, I'm going to sign with this label,
exactly.
I'll tour with these people. It's like all of that is like, no.
Yeah, it's like, bro, like, you'd be surprised at what will happen if you just, kind of do whatever you want and just kind of, and with that, I think I talked about this on Instagram too, is that a major factor, I think, through cutting through noise, is which is like, I think kind of like what we're talking about a little bit is embracing opposing factors, man. Just really like embracing two things that might not necessarily line up. And it's just going to give you higher visibility, Yeah,
man. It's all about taking those influences, which all of us have from one place or another, and kind of figuring out what it is about them that was so impactful for you. And then I think it's just flipping them, trying to like figure out how you can make that vibe your own.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you're right that it can be like a simple thing. It doesn't have to be super complicated, it can just be like you said, you made your own kick or whatever it is. Like just, flip a small thing and see if that changes something, see if that unlocks something for you. I really like that, man.
Yeah.
And so what's at this point, like, the buzz is here, man. Like, and it seems to be going really well. What's the plan going forward? Is there a plan?
Yeah, there's definitely a plan now.
Yeah.
It's I just want to be the American ambassador of hardcore, man. Like when you hear hardcore, I want you to think Lil Texas. That's my end goal. That Lil Texas is the guy. You know what I mean? Like Gesture's the Moombatone guy, you know, in my mind, at least, and he's killing it. You know what I mean? Shout out Jim, I love Jim, and good dude. And
him and Dave Nada, I think, are like the two still, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
and probably a bunch of other people.
Totally,
I'm so sorry for not mentioning, but
yeah, sorry guys.
But I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, that's just an easy example, and I want to be that hardcore guy. Yep. You know what I mean? I want to be the dude who's in America being the hardcore guy, and so we got a record coming out Q1 on a amazing label that I can't wait to announce, that I've always wanted to be on, with a bunch of cool dudes who loved that I was making hardcore. You know what I mean? That reached out to me,
Dude, it's what you said earlier. You built the world, and then people want to go live in that world.
Yeah, totally. And there's narrative to it too. And so there's 2 EPs definitely coming out next year on 2 separate labels, singles, remixes, definitely more mixes. The response to the mix that I put out recently was overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that was great. Tons of promo stuff. Like if you saw my last videos, the used car salesman.
I saw that.
Yeah. There's a lot more where that came from. I'm developing characters right now.
Well, yeah, man. I mean, we were talking beforehand about like, you know, other jobs you've had and like sales and branding and all this kind of stuff. I feel like that's another one of your strengths too, is that you're kind of, and maybe it's now you're able to bring all of these different things together in one, you know, under one roof.
Yeah.
But I don't know, have you always thought about sort of the visual, the aesthetic of things, how things are going to look, you know,
absolutely, that way? Dude. Like my friend who was in MOD with me, Young Satan, he was like, yeah, Sam, he's like, you always were so concerned with like building this character of Lil Texas. You always like wanted to like, you know, it was so important to you. You know what I mean? And yeah, dude, I've always just had a penchant for artists like that. I've always loved that. Like Les Claypool with the bass days, Les Claypool. You know what I mean? There was a world of Les Claypool that you could go get involved with.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And ICP fits that bill. And you know, there's DJs all over, you know, that have that sort of narrative that you can get involved with. And they have, I mean, that's probably why Marshmello is so successful.
Sure.
Because it's like he's not human almost.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like there's like this detachment from just a person.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, he's, you know, and I mean, the like branding thing they always say is like everybody is Marshmello because, you know, you can like make your own helmet and put it on and like, you know, all of that, which is, you know, like some of his branding gets a little strong, but like in general, it's brilliant, you know?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. And it's, you know, there's no wonder why he has done so well and had the staying power he has. But yeah, I've always been obsessed with that, man, and I've always wanted to hone that in, and unfortunately, like it didn't happen till it happened. You know what I mean? Just like everything in life, man, it's like until it organically clicks, forcing it is just not the way to do it, you know? And so now that we have, you know, sort of the framework, it's a lot easier, you know, and it all just kind of like came together and yeah, so branding is everything, dude. And the key to branding, if anybody wants to know, which I already mentioned, but here's another hint, it's to embrace a bizarre juxtaposition, which is something I learned from Mono Neon, the bass player of the late artist Prince, or formerly known as Prince, I don't know. Maybe it's Prince, but he was Prince's last bass player. He does really funny videos all over the internet. Some people might know him, but that's one of his tenets, is embrace bizarre juxtapositions. And it is my favorite thing in the world. And my roommates are probably like, who are probably listening to this right now, are probably like, oh my God, here he goes again. Oh shit. But it's true, man. You know, you take two things that don't match up, cowboys and hardcore, and you put them together. You know what I mean? Even the music. You take two things that don't necessarily match up, you put them together.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And everything, it just creates visibility. It creates a pathway through the oversaturation and noise that is EDM today.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. So it's like, how do you break through? Dude, it's possible. There's new artists all the time that are blowing up. Like, that's how, I think.
I agree, man. No, and I mean, to
or
sort
just a
of
startup.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. And it's like to see this new phase of what you're doing like take shape, it really has felt, as an outside observer, it felt like a breath of fresh air. And I think that's why so many people from all these different sectors were getting psyched about it, because it was just like, fuck, finally, like something weird, something dangerous. It does feel punk again, which I think for a few years, like dance music has not felt that punk. And to me, like what you're doing feels very punk. It's very refreshing.
Thank you.
And absolutely, man. And I think maybe, I don't know if you would agree, but it's taken, you know, sort of everything you've gone through up to this point to be ready for this moment, right? Where now you've had ups and downs personally, you've had ups and downs career-wise, but once you sort of see this window opening, I feel like now you have experience enough to know how to sort of maximize that window. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. And it's tough. Some days are hard.
Of
you know what I
course.
mean? And when I get, you know, when I get that big buzz, then I keep wanting that big buzz. You know what I mean? And it's tough. But what I've come to realize, even in this short amount of time, is that my last release didn't do as good as this hardcore mix, which actually was a huge it was a really good thing because it was like, oh wait, it dipped a little. My engagement dipped a little bit. Like, okay, that's fine. Just keep going, dude. Yep. Keep going. And then the sales carman or the used car salesman thing came into my head, and I was like, oh my god, we got to do this for the mix. And it was a fucking mix, dude. You know, it wasn't even a single. It was a mix on SoundCloud, and the more engagement than, you know, the past 2 tracks that I dropped.
Yeah,
but people did like those 2, but not as many as the first 2.
Of course, man. And that's always the way it is. You can never predict exactly what's going to hit, and you just got to kind of do what you like to do, what you're excited about, right? Is there anything else? You covered it earlier, but anything people should be looking out for? Anything you want to get out there before we wrap it up?
Yeah. I mean, next year there's going to definitely be some festivals. There's going to be some touring. There's going to be a full merch line coming out with everything you could possibly want.
Based on our discussions about ICP earlier, I'm really excited for this merch.
The merch is going to be cool. And then just a lot of records, you know, 2 EPs, definitely. There might be an album, who knows? Like singles, mixes. We're doing a ton of stuff, you know, and it's just for the scene, man. It's for the hardcore scene. It's like, I want more kids to make hardcore. So if you're out there listening to this, send me those motherfucking tracks because I want to listen to them. I swear I will listen to them. So if you're making tracks, up-tempo, hardcore, send them over, you know? And there's plans in that realm too, that might be coming out, you know, at some point.
This has been really fun, man. I'm glad to reconnect with you. I feel like I don't see you enough, man.
Likewise, man.
I'm going to wrap up just with one final question off the top of your head. Just a time in your life, and it could be recently or it could be from childhood, when music in a moment really deeply affected you. And that could be like changed the way you thought about something or gave you goosebumps or just attached to like an important moment in your life. And it doesn't have to be significant. It's kind of just the first thing that pops into your head.
Oh man, there's so many.
Of
like
course.
Just, oh my God. But the one that just popped into my head, since it's just the first one.
Yep.
Was actually very recently. I saw Korn on their 20th anniversary of Follow the Leader tour.
Oh, man.
At the Palladium. They sold it out. And it was unreal. I'd never seen them live. They were just as good as they were back in the day.
Oh, you didn't see them back in the day?
No, I never saw them back in the day, so I had to go. You know? One of my biggest regrets is not going to Family Values. But
I went, and it was fucking amazing.
It makes me so upset.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jam that in there.
I was like 10. There was no way I was going.
Yeah.
But anyways, when they played Blind. When they played Blind, and they played Seed, and they played Somebody Someone, and it was just overwhelming. Full body chills. My roommate said he teared up. Dude. I don't know if that's true, but
those moments are insane to me.
It was incredible.
Yeah, and it's something about accessing that earlier part of yourself. It's almost like you can go back and like hang out with the old version of you, you know, and the younger you, get back to those like primal feelings when we first got excited about music, you know?
Ignorance is bliss, man.
Like I remember I went to go see The Offspring play the Smash album all the way through. It was like the 20th or 25th anniversary.
Yeah.
And for me, the Offspring Smash album was so foundational for me as like a middle schooler.
Yeah.
And just watching them do it, like I literally like got teared up watching them do it, which is not a reaction I think you're supposed to have to that music.
No.
But I was just like, I really was like a kid again, you know? And it's like fucking that it's so powerful. And then for me, I don't know if you feel this way, like that's all I want to do with my music is like get that vibe out again and get other people to feel that way again.
Totally.
You know, it's a beautiful thing, man. I love that story.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great, dude.
Yeah, like
thanks for having me over.
No worries, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.
This was awesome.
All right, man. Peace.
Later.
All right, that's the show. Shout out to Lil Texas. Great to have you on, man. Great to catch up. Love everything he's doing right now. Make sure to watch him this year. He's got a brand new EP coming out. He's going on tour, playing at a bunch of festivals. All of that is going to be announced very soon. And make sure to go check out the Back to Bangers Spotify playlist that's linked to in the description of this episode, where you can hear some brand new music from Lil Texas. My name is Willy Joy. You can always hit me up at backtobackpod@gmail.com or at Willy Joy or at backtobackpod on all social media. And that's it, man. First episode of 2019 in the bag. The lineup we got coming up for the rest of January is fantastic. Working on some really exciting ideas for a little bit later in the year. I hope you had a great New Year's. I hope you're all just ready to kill it in 2019, whatever that means to you, whatever you're doing, wherever you're at. We're all in this together. I'm glad you're here with me. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you next week. For Back to Back, this is Willy Joy. Peace.